And I think there's a time for us.
So, trying out new operating models to bridge last mile access and equity issues in challenging geography.
Enormous opportunity. But what we've also seen, not only in our work here, is that unlocking this opportunity, how these principles might help you to make other choices than you would have made to the global economy. On the other hand, we see the leading regions like the Delhi region where we are today. These rankings is the reality of only a relatively innovation. Does it enable companies in your economy to achieve? So from solar cells to wind energy equipment to other things.
For the year 2011-12, the NSS Consumption Expenditure Survey for the year 2011-12. So in a sense, that data is more than 10 years old. Secondly, so A, it is not income, it's consumption expenditure. B, it is not 2022, it's 2011-12. C, the Gini coefficient is 0.35. With a Gini coefficient of 0.35, should I really worry? Yes, it increased. World Inequality Database.
Because it reduces our wastage and also gets us price parity to our local competitors. And lastly, of course, is the income disparity. There is a lot of work that has been done on this, but we are not where we should be. In terms of, if I talk about our overall employment is one of the highest sectors. I think we're at 45% as per the report, but we're only 20% of the GDP. And
assumptions you have about real growth rate, whatever assumptions you have about the exchange rate, and if you're doing it in nominal terms, whatever assumptions you have about the rate of inflation. And the nature of the exponential function is such that even if you are relatively conservative about real rates of growth, India won't do that badly. 99.99 to the power 365 and 100.01 to the power 365. Often we tend to think there is not much difference between the two. Try it out on the calculator. The function explodes because of its exponential nature. So even if you have relatively conservative real rates of growth, relatively conservative.
Not a roadmap or an action agenda that only applies to the specific parts of government that are affected by the individual proposals. What we're trying to do is actually to change the thinking across government. So every representative
Partnering with them in the launch, in the dissemination, in the propagation. This report has already been summarized in a very wonderful way by Christian. We will put this report up on our website. I'm sure IFC will do the same. So everyone will get an opportunity to read this report.
Climate change in various other and different ways. So I think the imperative, the compulsion to change is very clear. Now, how does that translate to how we might do different business models, what the government might be doing? So I think, look, every part of the whole section of the government and corporates have to get together, including civil society, to make this change happen, because it's a very transformational change. It's not a small change, it's a massive change. So far, our entire industrial complex has been based on emitting carbon, burning fossil fuels.
CAGR of this period. Because what we've learned in economics is that
the better the cleanliness is more about upkeep.
and visible physical cleanliness, and then comes hygiene. They lead to a direct improvement in productivity and the competitiveness of the workforce. The number of studies across, right from Africa to Netherlands to US, and we can go through them. Now, what does it relate to?
Enable people to sustain themselves. Now, if you look at the Indian situation, it is really stuck.
And go back 25 years back to think about how this report would have looked if we had attempted to write it at that time. Now, since I was at that time in the private sector, and I was part of similar exercises. Of course, I was very young, so I was mostly assisting other people in this work. And that was Avinash Pandey, who happens to be sitting here, a Harvard Business School alumni. Ashish, who's from Square Panda. Ashish was of great support, and Hari Menon from BMGF, who were of great support to really put this work off the ground. And without further ado, now over to Christian for making his presentation on the India Competitiveness Roadmap, which I think promises to be something very, very important and really push India to being a more competitive and a productive nation. Christian, building this further at the ministerial level or various ministries level, look at how this can actually be looked at for various sets of industries and possibly at the level of states as we move forward. And then of course, development of KPIs or key performance indicators is going to be very, very critical. But having said that, the most important factor is going to be that we have to look at this whole idea of dual challenge of development, social development and economic development, and that is what we need to move forwards towards. And this report and the framework does help us move into that direction. And without, I think this is where we would like to close the program. It's just been a pleasure to have you all with us today. Special thanks for Christian, or to Christian, for really flying in from Stockholm today. That is where he was. And special thanks to all the stakeholders, all the people who supported us, Avinash, then Ashish, VMGF, who did support, all the members of the stakeholder group. But I cannot thank two people enough, and that is Dr. Vivek Debroy and Amitabh Panji. Like, I think this wouldn't have been possible without their support and explicit support in terms of really pushing us into the direction of really giving.
All of you probably know this, but figuring out how a country can prosper as a country, particularly a large, complex country like this, it's one of the hardest problems ever on the face of the earth. Most countries around the world don't do that well. They struggle. The performance is very uneven. It's very hard to come up with an overall plan that works. And if we look at the data, a lot of countries are relatively